Today, we're going to take a look at some of the traits that make for a successful personal statement to the top 14 law schools. What makes a successful T-14 personal statement? Let's take a look. For those of you who are new, my name is Sydney Montgomery. I am the founder and executive director here at Barrier Breakers, where we work with all students on their college and law school application process, but we specialize in working with first-generation minority and immigrant students on the college and law school application process. And today, we're analyzing some successful T-14 personal statements and talking about what they have in common. And specifically, I get asked this question a lot. Sydney, I want to apply to the top X schools, top 5 schools, top 14 schools, top 25 schools, and I want to know, what do I need to do to make my personal statement as strong as possible for those schools? So first off, let me start off by saying that there's no one thing that you need to have in your personal statement in order to be successful for a top 14 school. However, it really is a combination of different factors that make for a strong personal statement. Here at Barrier Breakers, helping you write a strong personal statement is one of the things that we do best. 54% of students who apply to a top 14 law school with us end up getting accepted. 66% of all of Barrier Breakers students end up receiving at least a half tuition scholarship to law school. 34% of our students receive at least one full tuition scholarship to law school. We believe in helping students get results. But the way that we help students get results is by employing tried and true methods of helping students write strong, compelling narratives. And overall, there are a few key qualities that make for a strong personal statement, especially if you're applying to some of the best schools in the country. Now, the first thing is that we at Barrier Breakers believe that your personal statement should answer the question, why law and why now? How did your personal and professional experiences up to this point lead you to law? And what area of law specifically are you most interested in? Now, I know this last point is a bit controversial because there are many people that would say, oh, you don't need to know what area of law you want to practice before you go to law school, or, you don't need to say what area of law you want to practice when you are writing your essay. And I know this is a particularly vexing point for some of our students who come in and they're like, but I'm interested in so many areas of law. And I understand that, and it's great to be multi-interested, and it's okay to not have a completely solidified why law reasoning when you first start your law school application process. But I believe your law school application is kind of like your first case, if you will. It's your job to convince the admissions committee that you know why you're going to law school, that you've thought about it, that there's intentionality behind it and planning, and that it's something that you've been thinking about and leading toward for a bit. It's not something that you just woke up yesterday and we're like, I'm going to go to law school today, right? Or, getting a job sounds scary. Let's go to law school, right? There are reasons why people go to law school that maybe aren't the best. And for an admissions committee, they want to know that this is actually something that you want to do, that it's the continuation of a journey that you've been on, a sustained passion, the development of your career, and law school is the next logical step on your journey. And for us, explaining the area of law that you most want to make impact in goes hand in hand with convincing me that law school is absolutely the right step for you on your journey. And so today I'm going to walk you through a couple of personal statements. We're not going to go through all of them, but we have some essays that we've worked on with students, and these students have been accepted to Harvard and Berkeley, Georgetown, Columbia, some of the best schools in the country. And their personal statements were solid, compelling, and had a few qualities that we're going to go over. So that first quality that I said is that your personal statement should explain why going to law school is the next logical step on your journey. Now, I'm going to walk you through a student's essay. She was accepted to a number of top schools, and she was really interested in education law. Now, her essay starts off right in the middle of a scene. She is waiting to be let into her dean's office while she's in college to talk about her accommodations. And it was the first time that she had really understood and appreciated what her rights were under the American with Disabilities Act, an act she had never heard of until her dean brought it up. And a plan was created through the Office of Disability Services to help her get educational accommodations. This was a really meaningful and pivotal moment for her in her life. She then goes on to say 4 months later, she interviewed hundreds of people for a project with the New York City Department of Education, and she came across a girl who was not too much younger than her, who had been through a lot of difficulties in her life and had been recently displaced from her neighborhood in Manhattan and assigned to a shelter in the Bronx. In this student's essay, she talked about the fact that she learned about the McKinney-Vento Homeless Education Assistance Act. She learned about all of the educational resources that were available to the student and all of the ways that she could have helped if she had been more equipped with the knowledge of the law. She then fast forwards to her journey working through New York City public schools. She talks through her fellowship with a state board of education and the impact that she was able to make there, and ultimately how these experiences have really solidified her desire for education law and really solidified her desire to make impact directly with families and students in this way. Her personal experience with this, yes, as context, but then she has a series of professional experiences, internships, and fellowships that continue to solidify her desire to be in education law. And each story that she tells it's a story. It is just that it's not just words that you can also find on her resume. She's not just repeating what's on her resume, but she's showing the pivotal moments in each of those junctures, each of those opportunities that caused her to become even more sure that law school was the next logical step on her journey. Another student who is very successful and who ultimately went to Harvard showed us throughout her essay her passion for reform of multinational corporate entities and governance of transnational organizations. And you're like, wow, that's a mouthful. How do you explain that with beautiful anecdotes? And how do you not just make that sound like your resume? Well, she did this so well. And what I love about this student is she actually was a student that didn't have as much work experience as other students, but she had leveraged her internships and her personal connections. And she hints at the very beginning of her essay where her essay is going, which I think is so lovely because at every step I could see the vision and I could see and understand her passion for something that sounds very dense. She really made it so human. She made it understandable. She made me feel passionate about this area of law that she had. So her story starts off with a beautiful anecdote on a Saturday evening in Trinidad as she is playing with her cousins, watching the boats arrive, and she's talking about this man who taught her how to raise chickens, who taught her how to protect sea turtle hatchlings, and also the importance of tending to your neighbors. And it was from him that she said she learned that she wanted to be the protector of her small town. She said this guardian role was soon left to us children because the boats returned less frequently now, supporting only weary workers. Withheld wages and longer hours mandated by oil companies stripped my town of its vibrancy. To them, there was nothing an uneducated small town could do except yield to global giants. And this set the scene in her essay for all of the rest of the experiences she had, all of the rest of the experiences that followed from that. But right in that beginning, I'm taken in by this beautiful Caribbean scene, but I understand by the end of that paragraph that there's a tension here, that there's something here that pushed her to the law, and I understand where she's going, and that's so helpful and so important in your essay, right? You always want to give the reader a little hint. You don't need to overplay your hand, right? Show, don't tell, but it's nice to have a little bit of a hint to see, okay, where are we going? And am I following you? And is it making sense as I'm reading quickly through all these admissions essays? The second thing that I want to mention that all these strong essays have in common is that they choose their stories carefully, making sure to balance relevancy and recency. So there are so many reasons why we want to go to law school sometimes. And for some of us, our reasons for why we're going to go to law school are from our childhood. And I think it's perfectly okay to have a grounding contextual example, especially maybe in the beginning of your personal statement that might come from your childhood or earlier on in your life. But then we really do want to see what are the most recent examples or recent things that have brought you to law school. Because remember, that question is, why do you want to go to law school and why now? And if all of the examples you have are from elementary school, middle school, high school, but you are in your 30s, I'm confused, right? For me, it seems like I need a little bit more proof, more recent examples, if you will, that show me that law really is the next step for you. Because if there's no difference between 10 years ago and now, that is a little bit confusing for me. And now some of you are like, well, Sydney, I have been trying to go to law school for the last 20 years. It's not just that I haven't, been thinking about it. I have been thinking about it. And that's great. So I'd ask you and I challenge you to think creatively about what your recent examples are. Usually when we have a passion, whether that's a passion for child welfare law or a passion for animal law, y'all know how I love talking about animal law and food law, right? Or a passion for criminal justice reform. Usually to keep that passion burning, there is something. It doesn't have to be an internship. It doesn't have to be a fellowship. It doesn't have to be a government or a law firm job. I think people often feel like they have to have one of those as one of their recent and relevant experiences. It does not have to be that at all, but it should be something that really continues to show that this issue, this area of the law is still important to me. I'm in my volunteering, I spend my time doing community service in that area, or it is something that I'm doing research in, or I'm still studying it, or it's still personally affecting me. But there should be something recent and relevant that continues to prove to me that law school is the next logical step on your journey. So let's go back to those examples that I talked about. I'm going to go back to that education law example that I started with. What I love about this is that all of her examples are recent. Even her personal example is more recent. Now, in her personal example, she starts off with a time at a dean's office where someone is showing her for the first time that there are accommodations available to her, that there are rights that she has under the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it's the first time that she really encounters this intersection of her education and law. She could have easily started instead when she was 5 or 8, when she was, maybe first diagnosed with a learning difference, or when she first noticed something was different. Or she could have talked about how she felt in middle school or high school not having the right accommodations. But I think what she did so well in this essay is she actually started much more recently. She started in college. We didn't get the whole backstory in this personal statement, but by her starting in college and then picking up with her examples that came right after that, at New York City Public Schools, at the State Board of Education, in her fellowship programs, all of her examples were so recent. They were all within the last 2 to 3 years before she was applying to law school. And I think that's what made her application so strong, is because you could see that she was still very passionate, still aggressively going after this issue in any way that she could. And law school just makes sense at this point. Now, I am going to show an example of someone that did start a little bit further back, but still was able to bring it back to that recency and relevancy point with their stories pretty quickly. So this is an example of a student that ended up going to Columbia and did fantastic there. She came to the United States 8 years ago, and she was reconciling at that point the opinions and experiences that she had had in China, what she had been taught about nationalism, and what she had been taught about just global interactions, and reconciling that with coming to the United States for middle school. And she learned that in middle school and high school, she actually started to have a broader viewpoint of history, of globalism, of the interactions between nations, and some of the complexities around what is good and evil. She learned about many gray areas in historical narratives. And she said, I gradually realized that nations' distinct historical experiences greatly influenced, if not determined, their political system and societal values. I noticed I was making fewer dismissing judgments about unfamiliar ideologies. I carried this perspective to college, where I took more classes in humanities and social sciences. And she continues to talk about the research that she did. This is a student that was applying not too long after college, so her college experiences were actually quite recent. And then she talked a bit about her experience in Geneva and the internship that she did there, and how that taught her a lot about diplomacy and international organizations and global governance structure, and how important that was, and how that shaped her desire to go into an area of law that helped her create more global peace building and cooperation. right? And so for her, even though middle school was a long time ago, she really wanted to make sure that we understood the moment when her mind was opened, right? Because that was a pivotal moment in her life. But, and you can't see the essay, so I'll just explain it to you. We pivot to college, which for her was a recent example. I want to say about 3/4 of the way down the first page, maybe a little more than halfway down the first page. So even though we're starting with an example that's, from childhood, pretty far away from middle school, we get into the recent and relevant examples still on the first page, right? And then the rest of the second page is talking about that research and talking about the time that she spent in Geneva and talking about how that influenced her thinking and her desire to pursue law, right? And that's a way where if you're starting with an older example, that's okay. You just have to move it into a recent example pretty quickly and have a strong transition. Which brings me to the next thing that I want to talk about, which is all of these essays are able to weave together multiple experiences with strong transitions. So did you hear the way that I said, I carried this perspective, the perspective she had from middle school, I carried this perspective to college, and that's how we move to the next scene, right? Strong transitions are so important. You guys have heard me talk about outlining. You have heard me talk about putting those transitional phrases in your outline to make sure it makes sense. Well, this is an example of that, right? How do we get from one story to the next? How do we create movement in your personal statement so that we get the breadth of your experiences, which is important. Another example of a student that uses great transitions, going back to that Harvard essay that started in the Trinidad. So she talks about, to them, there was nothing an uneducated small town could do except yield to global giants. Her next sentence goes, across the globe, in India, I found myself in another small town. And then she talks about her experience there and how there were patterns that were repeating there. Her third paragraph starts, the recurrence of such similar phenomena can happen, and she lists a few different places. The last one that she listed, Atlanta or Ashburn, and now she takes us into her most recent experiences, her experiences in Atlanta because she was a college student there, and how she was making moves there on that level. And so she uses place beautifully in her transitions, right? We're starting off in Trinidad, and she says there's another small town just like it though in India, and this can happen even in Atlanta. And by moving us like that geographically, we move in between her experiences in a beautifully captivating way that doesn't feel forced. It feels like I'm with her the whole time, and it allows her to capture the development of her arc, of her passion towards this area of law. Another great example of transitions comes from another student who did happen to go to Harvard. He starts off his personal statement describing almost what can be a mundane work scene, but he really makes it come alive. My right hand shoots up to answer the call for a volunteer. Quickly, I begin to sink as I look around, noticing no one else enlisted. The silence in the room speaks volumes to a shared unwillingness to be held accountable when, not if, mistakes are made. He continues to talk about this project, and he says, I shuffled out of the conference room, my notepad full of new action items, and my mind wondering how I have yet again found myself enthused about working on assignments seen as undesirable by others. I remember several years before, I felt an even stronger discomfort. And then he goes in to talk about an example that is similar but mirrors it in a correctional facility. And so that's just an example of how you can use the same themes or the same feelings to move you from one experience to another. Transitions don't always have to be chronological. In this case, he took us backwards in time several years before, but he connected us with his feelings, right? And so oftentimes students feel like their transitions have to be, 6 years later. Another example when I did this was, and those are, I don't know, I would call them C+ transitions, right? Like they're transitions, and it's great that you have them because some transitions are better than no transitions, but they can be more interesting. And I think connecting us around a feeling, right? I remember when I had this feeling several years before. It's smooth. It takes you right into the next experience. He goes on to talk about his time in the correctional facility. He remembers helping out with a class there. And at the end, it says, "A deep respect lingered without words, that our time and existence were valued. This moment reinforced my desire to better understand the criminal justice system, specifically in the intersection of race, through my graduate school research. Thousands of miles and a few years later, at the University of Oxford, I continued to explore the notion of justice and race." Again, it's that beautiful weaving of feeling and time, right? His last transition took us backwards. This transition takes us forwards. But in doing that, he's covering a breadth of his experiences. And I often get questions from students. I have had 20 years of professional experience. How do I get this down to just 2 pages? And this is how. You're picking out moments. You're showing me, you're zooming in on certain moments, on certain anecdotes. You're giving me the details, the narrative storytelling details, and sometimes you're zooming out. And you are covering a wide array of experiences through these transitions that, like the other Harvard essay, connect us geographically to different locations, or this essay connect us through feelings to different times, forward and backward in your journey, so you're pulling the pieces together. What I love about the rest of his essay is that he then goes on a theme of curiosity. So he says, "The realization that my Black skin embodies my work led to my continued interest in how race and class shape one's social interaction. My curiosity led me further out of my small rural Mississippi town to critically question the systems in which my Black body is situated." Going further into his essay, that next paragraph, "My initiative and curiosity consistently lead to a distinct point of view." Again, we're connecting around themes, we're connecting around feelings, and we are covering a wide array of areas. So hopefully these excerpts from these very successful students that worked with us here at Barrier Breakers will help you as you're thinking about framing your personal statement. Remember that the ultimate job in your personal statement is to answer the question, what experiences do you have that are leading you to law school? And specifically, what area of law? It's that why law and why now question. And you want to focus on materials, experiences, and stories that you've brainstormed that are the most recent and the most relevant to help you. You can, of course, use a childhood example as context, but you want to move us into those recent and relevant experiences as soon as possible. And you want to connect your experiences thoughtfully with smart transitions. Transitions over time, over place, geography, over feelings, but move us through these experiences in a way that is a combination and a balance of the narrative storytelling that you know I love, the zoomed in part of the story, the moment, the pivotal moments that have shaped you and have caused you to think deeply about the law and to think deeply about this issue, while also leaving space to zoom out and be able to fully cover the breadth of the development of your arc that's leading you to this passion. Because ultimately you want to convince the admissions committee that you know why you want to go to law school, that this is not something that you just decided to do yesterday, because it's not. It's something that has been on your heart. It's something that is evident in how you spend your time or your research, your volunteering, your work, your internships, your fellowships, your personal lived experiences. And you want to build that case for the admissions committee so that you too can be just as successful as our Barrier Breaker students are. Of course, if you are looking for more guidance on your law school application process, we are here to help. We have an amazing team of 6 wonderful former and current admissions directors and deans of law schools. We are so blessed to have such a strong group of admission deans and directors that are here to help you. Our law school deans and directors have a wealth of experience, and we are so excited. They all understand the lived experience of being a first-generation student, a person of color, a marginalized student, and we are so excited to have them help you on your journey. Speaking of helping you on your journey, we still have just a few spots left for fee waiver applicants this cycle, and we definitely want to make sure that we're able to help you at our fee waiver nonprofit rate. We also always have that sliding scale discount for students that fall within our mission as a nonprofit. And all of our students, regardless of whether you're one of our boot camp students or one of our one-on-one students, get free continued guidance every single semester that you are in law school as part of our wellness and outreach program. That is just our gift to you because we want to make sure that you not only get in to the school that is going to be the best fit for you, but that you thrive and you graduate from the school that is going to be the best fit for you and get into the career that is going to be the best fit for you. We want you to be successful in your career. We want this to be a good investment in your long-term success. And here at Barrier Breakers, we really do believe that once you join us, you are part of our family for life. And that means that you can't get rid of me. I am here. I am going to be in your life for the next few years. And so that is a promise that I hope you're excited about, as excited as I am about, because we love supporting students here at Barrier Breakers. If you are looking for some free help, we do have our free essential guide to applying to law school. You can get that in the description or the show notes. We would love to be able to give you that support if you have an LSAC fee waiver. Our course on mastering your personal and diversity statement is free for you. If you don't have a fee waiver, it's $19. So, it's close. It's close. But we just want to make sure that you have all the support that you need this application cycle. As always, if this was helpful, make sure that you share this video with a friend, like and subscribe, rate and review. And if you have questions, don't hesitate to reach out to us at bit.ly/breakintolawschool. You can submit your questions there to be answered on the podcast, or you can email us at hello@barrier-breakers.org. We would love, love, love to support you. And we would love to hear from you and see how we can be helpful in your journey. As always, I am cheering you on, and I will see you guys very soon.